Michael Smith got the idea and he rigged the system to actually get paid. Went onto these platforms and stole from you. Smith could generate approximately 661,440 streams per day. If it wasn't bad enough that music distributors are already withholding your royalties, forcing you to come and hire me to write these big scary demand letters to get your stuff released, if that wasn't bad enough, now apparently there are other musicians who are also stealing your royalties. If you guys are wondering what's going on with my background, we're moving, okay? We just moved to a new location, so we're getting set up here. But look, this person, this musician, he was charged recently, and we're gonna go through the indictment. You know me, I always have to get it. So this is actually the sealed indictment. But let me just give you the quick overview, because we're talking about someone who took $10 million in royalties. And it's not just that piece, which is huge, but also it was a scam done in conjunction with an AI company. As we're continuing to talk about the Sunos and Udios and just concerns about the impact on the music business and your guys' jobs and all this stuff, well, this has now resulted in $10 million being lost. We'll go through this article, which recaps it very nicely. This is Forbes. There we go. All right, so man charged with 10 million streaming music scam using AI generated songs. So here's a quick overview. It was in a scheme federal authorities are labeling as brazen fraud. A North Carolina man allegedly used AI to create hundreds of thousands of songs, then continuously streamed them using bot accounts to generate unlawful royalty payments totaling more than $10 million. For you guys that have your music on music platforms, right? Let's say you're getting 100,000 streams, you're getting 500,000 streams, and you're doing these really big numbers. It still is not translating to a huge amount of money. So to say this guy is taking $10 million, but then also the impact. Here's the thing. So many of you will contact my law office seeking help because you've been locked out of your music distributor account, because your music distributor has taken your royalties, your music is down off of music platforms, and a lot of times it's because there's an allegation of streaming fraud. 99% of the time, you weren't participating in streaming fraud. There was some kind of automation mistake. You may have done, let's say, a big campaign, a big PR campaign, and you paid. We had one client who paid like $30,000 for Facebook ads. And so it resulted in a surge of traffic, and that traffic triggered the spidey sense of Spotify. And here we are. So is this helping any of the musicians who are trying to make a living, the producers, the music artists? Let's keep going. This musician is Michael Smith, and he's 52. A musician himself was arrested on Wednesday, according to the United States Attorney's Office, and charged with 3 crimes. Law enforcement officials call the case the first of its kind involving artificially inflated music streaming. Now, here's the thing. Let me just clarify. In the realm of crimes in which the state is coming after you, the government is coming after you, versus there are civil bad acts where a personal person does a thing, hurts a company, the company now takes an issue where it's a person against a person, so it's not involving basically the state or the government. So they're saying now this is one of the first times where basically for streaming fraud, we have someone who is being indicted. This is as they call it, precedential. All right, quote, the defendant's alleged scheme played upon the integrity of the music industry by a concerted attempt to circumvent the streaming platform's policies, right? Which is what these streaming platforms say you guys are doing. They're like, you're trying to fake us out and get these fake streams. So FBI Acting Assistant Director Christy M. Curtis said in a statement jointly released by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York, quote, the FBI remains dedicated to plucking out those who manipulate advanced technology to receive illicit profits and infringe on the genuine artistic talent of others. So already, because this is a different perspective, right? We read terms of service and we expose these businesses and these music distributors because they'll have all kinds of sneaky language saying if there's even a claim about artificial streaming, fake bots, if there's even a claim of copyright infringement, if there's a claim of trademark infringement, if any of these things happen, we reserve the right to take all your royalties, kick you out, take your money, and there's nothing you can do about it. And respectfully, I disagree. But that is what the contract says. And that is what you guys sign when you get onto these platforms. So then in this situation, we go, well, Michael Smith, Michael Smith got the idea of, well, you know what? Basically, money laundering. I can put a whole lot of songs onto music platforms. I can pay bots, right? I can pay for these fake plays. And he rigged the system to actually get paid. I think half of you watching this are just like, geez, what are your methods? I'm totally kidding. So let's just go on with the article. Here we go. Scamming Spotify, YouTube Music, and more. The statement announced the unsealing of the indictment against Smith, which we're going to read. We have it. This was filed in a district court in New York. It alleges that between 2017 and current this year, this musician fraudulently inflated music streams on services like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, and YouTube. It's not immediately clear who Smith's attorney is to get a comment. Okay, and so then they go in and give us some, what I thought was interesting. They go, streaming subscriptions in the US were up 3% to 99 million. There's 99 million users who use some kind of streaming subscription. Over the first half of 2024, according to the Recording Industry Academy of America, and this was their report. During that time, the report says streaming services grew 4% at retail value to a record of 7.3 billion. We're going to actually turn over to actually, see what the indictment says itself, because you know what? This is always where it gets juicy. This is always where they are not trying to say this in a nice kind of way, which, might happen in an article. So let's go over to this. All right, this is the sealed indictment, okay? And let's go down. Count 1. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud. So there was a grand jury. This is how, the indictment occurs. So this was actually in front of a grand jury, and this is because it's in a federal court, which we know is because it's in the district court. From approximately 2017 up into 2024, Michael Smith orchestrated a scheme to steal millions of dollars of music royalties by fraudulently inflating music streams on digital streaming platforms. Okay, so we just went over those. Smith purchased from a Coconspirator. Are they going to tell us the name here? Hundreds of thousands of songs that were created through AI and then uploaded to the streaming platforms. Okay. And so they're specifically saying a co-conspirator, because when I initially read the article, I'm like, okay, so what do? Do they go into like Udio? Because obviously you can spit out a whole lot of music. And then if that's what this musician was doing and then putting them onto music platforms, well, it doesn't mean that there's like a co-conspirator, just used a platform to then defraud companies and people. Okay, but let's see if they mention it maybe a little bit later. So Smith then used bots, automated program to stream AI-generated songs billions of times. At the height of his fraudulent scheme, Smith used over 1,000 bot accounts simultaneously to artificially boost streams of his music across the streaming platforms. By manipulating the streaming data in this matter, he obtained more than $10 million in royalty payments to which he was not entitled. So, I mean, look, this guy was doing it, for a while. Come on, to get to $10 million in streaming royalties. The drafter goes at all times relevant. The individuals could stream the music on these different streaming platforms. Each time a song is streamed on the streaming platforms, the songwriter who composed the song, the musician who performed it, and in certain cases, the rights holder are entitled to small royalty payments. Sort of. We'll come back to that. The exact amount of the royalty payments owed varies depending on a total number of factors, but it's often less than 1 cent per stream, right? So we're like, again, we're trying to get to the math here of how long. He was doing it since 2017. We did say that. But the frequency, how did he get to 10 million over really just a few years? So it goes on. The funds, and this is just, the attorney trying to explain music business, which I can understand and appreciate. The funds used to pay royalties to songwriters, composers, lyricists, and music publishers, hereafter the songwriters, are obtained from the streaming platforms. Again, I'm going to come back to this. Generally, the streaming platforms are required to pay certain percentages of their revenues to performance rights organizations, not quite right, for the rights to publicly perform the songs, known as performance royalties, and to the Mechanical Licensing Collective, that is true, for the right to digitally reproduce and distribute songs, known as digital mechanical royalties. The streaming platforms also send data on streaming activity along with the revenue pool. All right, so let me slow down on this one. The streaming platforms also send data on streaming activity along with the revenue pool, which is then used by the PROs and the Mechanical Licensing Collective, collectively the rights organizations, to proportionally allocate and disperse payments from the revenue pool to songwriters whose songs are streamed during the same period that the streaming platforms earned revenue. So look, in other words, what we do know about the Spotify, and the other DSPs, the digital service providers, is that there's not an allocated number to each stream that is obtained, right? There's this royalty pool, there's this revenue pool that you get paid out of. And some artists get paid more than others. And so when we say this artist went onto these platforms and stole from you, that's why. And that's kind of part of the conversation. We're like, well, if there's already an oversaturation issue because everyone's a rock star, everyone's a bedroom producer and all this stuff. And so everyone's putting their stuff on music platforms. And I think the last I checked, it was like 1 million every month, right, is ingested just into Spotify. It's probably a lot more than that at this point. But now we have artificial intelligence. We have Sunos. We have Udios, where now everyone quite literally is an artist, and the amount of effort that's needed to create music is a lot less. There's a lesser threshold. It's less expensive. And so again, oversaturation issue. And so therefore a dilution of royalties that are being paid. And then apparently this guy decides that taking $10 million from the pot is okay. We disagree. Become your own record label, which is literally if you're like, hey, I want to start a record label. Cool, I got you. Understand the entire music business. I want to set up my LLC. I want to do the marketing. It's a lot. So for example, sync licensing, for example, music marketing, it's significantly cheaper than anything you would ever get from a law firm as far as all the stuff that comes with it. And you want to make 6 figures from your music career and you want to do this for real, like I'm going to give you what you need. All right, so moving on, as a result, streaming fraud diverts funds from songwriters whose songs are legitimately streamed by real consumers to those who use automation to falsely create the appearance of legitimate streaming. Yeah, and then like I said, I fight with the distributors all the time because I'm like, my real artists with their real streams, and you're saying that there was fraudulent streaming, and there just wasn't. The funds used to pay royalties to performing artists, record companies, or other sound recording distributors who are after the artists are also obtained from the streaming platforms. Now, look, let me just clarify one thing for everyone in the back. When you make money on music platforms, you had to release your music through a music distributor. You cannot get your music on platforms of music without the distributor. It's just the rules, and we're so frustrated by that. But that's not where you make all of your money. So they had mentioned performance rights organizations, and so like there's BMI, there's ASCAP in the United States. And so there's multiple ways to make the money, right? But the royalties that come from the masters, meaning the final recorded versions of your songs, come from the music platforms, get paid to your music distributor. Your music distributor takes a fee if they're taking a fee, and then they pay you, right? So that's why we say music distributors are the glorified banks. So there is a little bit of distinction on like where the money comes from, but let's keep cruising. So like songwriter royalties, streaming platforms are generally required to pay a pool of royalties to artists for the right to stream the sound recordings that embody musical compositions. This revenue and the royalty pool is then allocated proportionally amongst the artists based on their respective percentage of total streams. Close. These allocated royalty funds are then paid directly by streaming platforms to artists through the record companies and music distribution companies. Streaming fraud thus diverts sound recording royalties away from artists whose sound recordings were legitimately streamed by real consumers in the same way that streaming fraud diverts musical composition royalties away from songwriters. And look, this is Spotify's argument of why they instituted sanctions. And they're like, if you're an artist, if you're a record label, if you're a music distributor, if we catch you participating in botting and basically fake streams, you're going to get sanctioned. They're trying to combat this, but it's tough because me as a practitioner, right? I'm a lawyer. I've been doing this for over 10 years and I specialize in music law. And so I have been on the ground floor just seeing this in practical effect. And my experience has been that there's been almost an overcorrection in the systems, in the way that, the streaming fraud is identified, which results in incorrect claims of fake streaming. And so for me, when a case like this, it's not even so much the 10 million. It's just that now it's just kind of like more justification for music distributors and music platforms to be like, yeah, see, this is why we have to have all these things into place. There's a tug of war happening here because equally you could be like, well, maybe we understand. Maybe we get it. And, as the music distributors and music platforms, everyone's just trying to combat, all the fakery and the stealing. So therefore, that's why they have to have these really aggressive terms of service. This is why they have to be very one-sided and, quite frankly, unfair to artists. All right, just moving on. So Michael Smith, the defendant, made false and misleading statements to the streaming platforms, rights organizations, and certain companies that facilitate the distribution of artist music to the streaming platforms. As described below, those lies were repeated and varying, but all were intended to promote and conceal this massive or his massive streaming manipulation fraud. And it was. As a result of this false and misleading statement, Smith fraudulently obtained millions of dollars in royalties payments from the streaming platforms, organizations, and distribution companies. Right here, streaming fraud is prohibited by streaming platforms, music distributors, and rights organizations. These streaming platforms generally prohibit streaming manipulation in their terms of service. Yeah, that's what they say. For example, at relevant times to this indictment, one of the streaming platforms that Michael Smith, and we'll call this streaming platform 1, Michael Smith, the defendant, distributed his songs to, had user guidelines that prohibited, quote, artificially increasing play counts or follow counts, artificially promoting content, or other manipulation included, 1, using any bot script or other automated process. All right. So we've looked at all the big boys at this point. We have looked at all the major music distributors, and we're starting to kind of get into some of the smaller ones as well. And when we look at their terms of service, they totally say this. There's not a single, there's every single music distributor that we've looked at in their terms of service, the contract that you sign when you get on their platform, it says you cannot participate in artificially increasing the plays on your songs. Do we have a problem with that? No, like it's going to result now and today, in sanctions for these distributors. So we can understand that. The problem is always what comes after that, which is something to the effect of, if you're caught, or if we believe, if we determine in our sole judgment that we think you are participating in artificially increasing the play counts, then we reserve the right to take your royalties. In some cases, right, with like the TuneCores of the world, they go so far as to be like, we're not only going to take your royalties, we reserve the right to give them to any third party that we so choose just because we decided. And we can even come after you for any of the royalties that we have already paid you before this. It gets pretty aggressive. So to the drafters' point, they do in fact have this language in all of their agreements. Likewise, music distribution companies which facilitate the distribution of artist music to the streaming platforms also prohibit streaming fraud. For example, distribution company 1, Michael Smith, distributed his songs. So this company was distributing his songs to streaming platforms, which required Smith to, quote, agree not to engage, permit, enlist, retain. Okay, so like, all this stuff. You agree you're not going to do all this crap on our platform to defraud people. And then they looked at, it looks like a Florida-based music distribution company. Can we guess who that is, anyone? No? No one? So they're probably talking about Symphonic in this one. So let's see what this Florida-based distribution company has to say. To distribute his songs to the streaming platforms, required customers such as Smith to, quote, represent and warrant that they would not engage in so-called illegal botting, fraudulent streaming, or juicing, or activities or any similar activities designed to artificially inflate, which he did. All right, so let's look at the scheme. What did he do? The music streaming fraud proceeded in 3 stages. And what were those? First, Michael Smith, the defendant, created thousands of accounts on the streaming platforms. These are the bot accounts that he could use to stream songs. Second, Smith used software to cause the bot accounts to continuously stream songs that he owned. See, I'm so interested. Did he come up with this software? Did he hire someone? Because it makes it seem like he came up with something rather than being like he used like a third-party company. But let's keep going. Third, Smith collected royalties based on fraudulent streams by the bot accounts. So he used the following methods to create the bot accounts. He obtained thousands of email accounts. Oh, interesting. He obtained thousands of email accounts, which are the fake email accounts that he created to, or that he used to create and register the bot accounts. All right, so I take it back. It does sound like maybe he was using someone else's platform, right? Smith typically purchased the fake email accounts from vendors who sold bulk email accounts. Yeah, I mean, they said thousands, right? So I wonder how that works. The fake email accounts were often in the name of fictitious identities. Here's the thing. Here I am. I'm like, couldn't you go to like Gmail Go to Gmail, but wouldn't that be a pain in the butt, right? And doesn't Gmail have like protocols when you set up your accounts or like not emails, but like a backup email, a phone number? So I just learned something. I guess you can go buy thousands of email addresses, which is what Smith did. Smith then used fake email accounts to create and register the bot accounts on streaming platforms. Smith typically registered the bot accounts in fake names corresponding to the fake email accounts. All right, I'm curious about this because it goes, he used the fake email accounts to create and register the bot accounts on streaming platforms. That's not how it works. So I'm curious, maybe this is just a drafting mistake. Maybe he was using it for fake accounts with the music distributors because, as you guys know, we cannot upload our stuff directly to music platforms. But let's keep going. Smith typically registered the bot accounts in fake names corresponding to the fake email accounts. Oh, I wonder if maybe these were the accounts just to listen. All right, so let's keep going. What maybe he was just like getting accounts like on Spotify, so his fake accounts could listen to his music. Maybe that's what it is. At a certain point, Smith had as many as 10,000 active bot accounts on the streaming platforms. Signing up such a voluminous number of bot accounts on the streaming platforms was labor intensive. Yes, it was. And Smith paid individuals located abroad as well as co-conspirators located in the United States to do the data entry work of signing up for the bot accounts. For example, in May of 2017, email to a co-conspirator, Smith asked to create bot accounts on a particular streaming platform. Quote, make up names and addresses, just make sure they are all the same for family member, and also make sure everyone is over 18. Oh boy. To maximize the streams by the bot accounts, Smith typically paid for family plans on the streaming platforms, this guy's investing. You're telling me this is like his business scheme? Okay, I think I'm getting it. So he's going and he's registering and getting these family plans on Spotify on the streaming platforms, right? And then he's using all of these fake email addresses. And then he's hiring people abroad and then also in the United States to go and actually sign up. This guy is working so hard. Can I be honest? Every once in a while, I'll meet someone who, and there'll be some kind of story like this. And I'm like, you're working so hard, but you're working so hard for something that's literally going to land you in jail. Like, could we just come up with a content schedule and get you posting and get you like to build the real audience? I'm just saying. You're doing a lot of work here, buddy. All right, Smith paid for the bot accounts, typically using proceeds generated by his fraudulent scheme. I mean, he must have just done the math and he's like, you know what? It's going to cost me this to do all these steps. And obviously, he did make $10 million, right? In order to make it appear as if the bot account or group of bot accounts within a family plan used a different source of payment, Smith used a Manhattan-based service, Financial Service One, that provided large numbers of debit cards. Oh my gosh! Typically, corporate debit cards for employees of a company. Smith lied to the financial company and provided it with dozens of fake names corresponding to the fake email accounts and bot accounts, claiming that those fake names belong to employees of his company. So I'm just wondering, does this musician have some insight? Because here's the thing. I don't think it's common knowledge that you need to have different payment processors, right? Different cards for all your different accounts. That wouldn't have, you know what I'm saying? That wouldn't even have occurred to me. I'm like, are they even looking in that? They don't care. But maybe they care. Maybe he has some kind of insight here because there was a reason he chose to do this and take these extra steps to get all these different cards. Smith used more than 1.3 million in fraudulently obtained royalties to fund the debit cards so that they could be used to purchase the bot accounts and promote his fraudulent scheme. All right, so I think he got a taste. I think he was doing this. He got a taste. He earned some money. And then obviously once he had quite a bit of money, he just decided to invest in his new business. Specifically, in multiple transactions from approximately 2020 to 2023, Smith transferred 1.3 million in fraudulently obtained royalties to a bank account he controlled at a US-based financial institution in the name of SMH Entertainment, and then transferred the proceeds to the financial company in order to fund the debit cards for the bot accounts. So you guys know I'm always like, hey, make sure you get your LLC set up, right? Get your corporation, whatever. So he did. I mean, he's like following along with our music business course. He's like, I'm going to set up my LLC. I'm going to get my trademarks. Wow. And I mean, he already at this point, we had 1.3 million. And so they said this was in approximately 2020. So, during the pandemic, he's doing pretty good. Quite the scheme. After registering the bot accounts, Michael Smith, the defendant, then caused the bot accounts to continuously stream songs he owned using the following methods. And they're going to explain this, I'm sure, about the songs he owned. All right. So was he investing? Was he because they said he's a musician. Was he making all his music? Smith used cloud computer services so that he could use many virtual computers at the same time. Smith used some of the bot accounts on each virtual computer at the same time. Smith typically used the web players for each of the streaming platforms and had a number of bot accounts simultaneously streaming music on separate tabs in internet browsers on the virtual computers. I wonder if he had like a ton of computers in his house. Smith purchased and subsequently modified macros, or small pieces of computer code that automatically continuously played the music for him. So, this is a full-time job. Michael Smith, the defendant, then obtained millions of dollars in royalties based on the artificially inflated streams of music. In October 2017, Michael Smith, the defendant, emailed himself a financial breakdown of how many streams he was generated each day and the corresponding royalties amount. Guys, can we just come together for a sec? I always tell you, I'm like, if you are having a dispute with someone, if you are making an agreement with someone, you have to document it. Emails, text messages, sign a contract, document it. Because later on, it's really tough to prove what you agreed to, if it was a handshake deal, if it was a verbal agreement. Conversely, if you are actively defrauding music platforms and then you are documenting it and sending it in emails to the team and giving them instructions, this is information that can be used against you later on. So in the email, he wrote in substance and in part that he had 52 cloud services accounts, and each of those accounts had 20 bot accounts on the streaming platforms for a total of 1,040 bot accounts. He further wrote that each bot account could stream approximately 636 songs per day. And so in total, Smith could generate approximately 661,440 streams per day. Man, he really had his system down, didn't he? So he estimated that the average royalty per stream was half of 1 cent, which would mean daily royalties of $3,307.20 a month, and monthly royalties of $99,000, and annual royalties of $1 million, 200,000, well, I guess $1,200,128. Wow. So, well, I guess he had to conceal it somehow because he's been doing this since 2017. Here, Orko, what are your thoughts?
This is crazy. Like as you're reading it, I went back to the Forbes article and I was like, how old is this guy? And he's like,
no, we said that at the beginning. He's in his 50s.
52, and that makes total sense. Like he's doing, like, this reminds me of like the old credit card scams that used to go on so they could money launder. So they would steal a whole bunch of credit cards or blank credit cards, and then they would buy a whole bunch of stuff for it, and then like boats, TVs, and stuff like that, and then they would fence all of those items off, like old organized crime tactics. Like this guy is going old school with his tactics.
Totally. And Nicholas said, like, what a waste of talent and intellect. He was a musician. He obviously is very well organized. He came up with a business plan. And it's just, for me, I'm like, and then you got caught versus just doing the real thing and doing the hard work, which, like, trying to make it in the music business, it is hard work. But
he would have made the $10 million. I'm going to pop out in a second, but I just want to I'm just blown away hearing this, just like his method. Like he's setting up accounts. He has like 20 windows open on his computer. He's setting up virtual computers, have 20 windows open on it, and paying some guy in different time zones and stuff so we can, like, what a lot of work
going in. All right, let's get back to this. Here we go. His efforts to conceal his fraudulent scheme. Michael Smith was aware that the streaming platforms would shut down his bot accounts if they learned that he was fraudulently streaming music. Smith therefore took steps to conceal his scheme and to evade the streaming platform's fraud detection and prevention system. As described above, Smith used false names to sign up for the bot accounts and used debit cards in false names to pay for the bot accounts. Smith caused the bot accounts to log into the platforms using different virtual private networks to conceal the fact that the bot accounts were all operating from Smith's home. Smith directed his co-conspirators that the bot accounts and macros be undetectable at least put every safety measure in to avoid detection. So here's the thing, we haven't even gotten to the AI stuff yet, right? Didn't they say there's some AI company that's a co-conspirator? Smith spread his automated streams across thousands of songs to avoid anomalous streaming to any single song. Smith was aware that if, for example, a single song was streamed 1 billion times, it would raise suspicions as to the streaming platforms, right? And the music distribution companies that those streams were the result of streaming manipulation. A billion fake streams spread across tens of thousands of songs, however, would be more difficult to detect because each song would only be streamed a couple of times. Well, and he said it was 600,000 per day, right? As a result, Smith repeatedly identified the need for more songs as crucial for facilitating the fraud scheme. All right, this is making sense. For example, in October of 2018, Smith emailed two co-conspirators that, quote, in order to not raise any issues with the powers that be, we need a ton of content with small amounts of streams. In December 2018, he emailed two co-conspirators that said, quote, we need to get a ton of songs fast to make this work around the anti-fraud. I mean, this guy's just like, what's he doing? What's he doing? Get on a phone call. On or about May of 2019, he emailed a co-conspirator that, quote, I can't run the bots without content, and I need enough content so I don't overrun each song. That's the problem. If we get too many strings on one song, it comes down. At this point, I mean, he's growing this thing, and they're like, well, he emailed two co-conspirators, he emailed someone else. And I'm like, how many people are on his team at this point? You know what I mean? Like, how big has he built this enterprise? And then I'm curious whether he ever went so far as to like, hey, let's have an agreement. Let's do contracts. Like sometimes these like high level fraudsters, they will be like, no, you need to sign a non-disclosure agreement. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm just, his level of sophistication. I'm just curious. Smith turns to artificial intelligence. Let's go, let's go. To successfully execute the streaming fraud, Michael Smith, the defendant, needed access to a large volume of songs. Although Smith was himself a musician and had access to a small catalog of music that he owned, that catalog was not nearly enough for Smith's streaming fraud. As explained below, Smith needed to own far more songs for his scheme to generate meaningful illicit proceeds. Smith attempted several strategies, trial and error, to obtain enough music to operate his fraudulent scheme. Early in the scheme, he used the catalog of a music publicist to fraudulently generate royalty payments. Later, he attempted to sell his fraudulent streaming scheme as a service, in which, see, this one. He attempted to sell it as a scheme, right, to other musicians who would pay him for streams he would fraudulently generate or share royalties with him in exchange for fraudulently streaming their music. I mean, come on. I don't know how the pitch goes, but if you're like, hey, I can get you 600,000 streams per day, and all I need is your music. You don't have to pay me anything. You're going to get a split of this, and you're going to get 600,000 streams. All right, so let's see why this didn't work. Why did he move on from this? But neither strategy allowed Smith to gain access to the massive volume of songs the scheme needed in order to evade detection. All right, so it was moving too slowly. And so let's see what he did. Smith eventually turned to AI to expand his fraudulent scheme and in turn, his illicit proceeds. In or about 2018, Smith began working with the CEO of an AI company. Come on, you're not going to give us the name? And a music promoter to create hundreds of thousands of songs using artificial intelligence that Smith could then fraudulently stream. I gotta tell you what I would give to know what company that was. All right, Smith began manipulating the streams of AI-generated music in or about October of 2018. Man, so he was early to the game. In or about 2018, he began working with the CEO and a music promoter, right, for hundreds of thousands. He began manipulating streams with AI-generated music in October 2018, and the publicist described the initial streams of the AI music as proof of concept. Interesting. Smith reported that as of October 2018, he had generated hundreds of thousands of streams of the AI music, and CC4, okay, so CC4, the music promoter, replied, quote, we've proved the model works. Ah, man, these companies are just going down. All right, so the publicist soon began providing Smith with thousands of songs each week that Smith could upload to the streaming platforms and manipulate the streams for. In a March 2019 email, Smith to the publicist explained what kind of music he was sending. He said, quote, keep in mind that what we're doing musically here, this is not music, it's instant music. By 2019 of June, in June, the defendants reported to these different companies, quote, we are at 88 million total streams so far. Wow. He further explained that his fraudulent scheme was earning approximately $100,000, $110,000 per month, and that these companies were each receiving 10% of those fraud proceeds. Finally, Smith asked the publishing company to provide him with another 10,000 AI songs so he could spread this out more with his streams in order to evade detection by the streaming platforms. It's interesting because when they go after these companies who exploited someone else's music, these publishing companies represented real artists, real musicians, and they were getting them distributed through Smith. And it was resulting in a lot of streams, right? I don't know, the communication piece of like, do they know? For all of the 10,000 songs and the creators of those, like, do they know that their songs, that this is what happened? Did they think that their stuff was just going amazingly viral and they were just so excited? Like, what's the knowledge piece? All right, so we're up to 2019. So Smith and the publicist or the publishing company entered into oh, look at this, they did the contract, I called it, entered into a master services agreement. All right, what did they say? In which the AI music company agreed to provide Smith with between 1 to 10,000 songs each month. They further agreed that Smith would have full ownership of the intellectual property rights in the songs. All right, so that's interesting because if this is the AI company, there's no copyright that carries with the fully made AI songs. We know that. But I think what they're saying is that we are just giving you ownership of the assets themselves. So in turn, Smith agreed to provide metadata, meaning, among other things, song and artist names to attach to these fake songs. Basically, the AI generated songs, and to pay CC3's company each month the greater of 2,000 or 15. I mean, look at this. Like, he's negotiating the greater of 2,000 or 15% of the streaming revenue he generated from the AI songs. And I'm like, if this guy is operating at this level, and what did he say? He's making $110,000 a month. I mean, we're all business people over here, right? Let's have a master services agreement and we're going to, shake hands. And here's the thing, though. If you sign a contract that has illegal stuff in it, it's not actually an enforceable contract, right? So this really isn't going to help anything, and it only further documents your illegal activity. The company ultimately provided Smith, the defendant, with hundreds of thousands of AI songs. Wow, hundreds of thousands of AI songs for which he could manipulate the streams. The songs were typically given file names that were a randomized list of letters and numbers, such as Smith then created randomly generated songs and artist names for audio files so that they could appear to have been created by real artists rather than AI, for example. And so you guys can just look at this. And I wonder if he came up with this or he just asked ChatGPT to help him out. The AI technology that CC3 used to generate AI songs for Smith, the defendant, improved over time, making it less likely that the streaming platforms would detect the scheme. For example, we're now at 2020. Here we go, COVID. In August of 2020, in an email, he wrote, quote, song quality is 10 to 20 times better. And we also have vocal generation capabilities. Have a listen to the attached for the idea of what I'm talking about. And we do know that to be the case. We know that these Udio and Suno platforms, I mean, the quality is just continuing to improve and just be really impressive. Smith caused hundreds of thousands of AI songs to be streamed by his bot accounts billions of times, which allowed him to fraudulently obtain more than 10 million in royalties. In a February 2024 email, Smith boasted that his, quote, existing music has generated at this point over 4 billion streams and 12 million in royalties since 2009. Ooh, how we feeling, team? Drop a comment. Let's go, let's go. I don't know, man, with these business, schemes and all of that, that's why I just said this at the beginning. I'm like, he's getting organized. He found something that makes money. And technically, he found a way to really monetize his music, right? Okay, so we're at the tail end of this, so let me just jump to it. So he's in some hot water, to say the least. So here's the count really fast. We were just on 1, so now 2. This is wire fraud, so they incorporate all the prior stuff from in or about 2017 through 2024. Smith knowingly having devised and intending to devise a scheme to, and artifice. It's funny, we laugh about this. Lawyers just use big words. And artifice to defraud and for obtaining money and property by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises for the purpose of executing such scheme and artifice, transmitting and causing to be transmitted by wire, radio, television communication in foreign commerce. So he basically is like using, commerce, the internet, to fraudulently obtain royalties. Count 3, money laundering. And when I talk with music distributors, we kind of discuss when they do catch people who are participating in fake streams because they're actually laundering money. And they're just like, what we have to do with that, because, there are times where we do need to take that money. And this is where I have a challenge as an attorney, because they use that same excuse argument for why they're like, we don't want to release the royalties to your artists. And I go, you're the bank. My client, who is a real artist and doing all the things, to the extent you want to kick them off your platform, fine, do that. But, I would have a really hard time representing this guy. You feel me? When someone really is caught and there's money laundering. All right, so count 3, money laundering. He has laundered a whole lot of money, forfeiture allegations. So the offenses alleged in counts 1, 2 of this indictment, Smith shall forfeit to the United States pursuant to U.S. Code Section 981 and Title 28, any and all real and personal that constitute or is derived from proceeds traceable to the commission of said offenses. So, AKA, he now owes the government a whole lot of money. Let's do a quick update here. Here, Orko, I'm going to bring you in really fast.
While this is going on, there has been updates. Basically, they're saying that it was the founder of Boomy, this Alex Mitchell, is the guy
no,
that
I got it. Let's read through it.
yeah, he made himself an author, a co-writer on the songs, like tying him to all these songs. So I don't know.
Wow. Okay. All right. Let's look at the update. Let's go. In the wake of a $10 million royalty heist indictment, is Boomy's ADA Warner music deal still alive? Here's what we know. Okay. So this was published today. Last year, Boomy inked a high-profile distribution tie-up with Warner's Music ADA. Is the deal still on after the AI music generator's CEO was reportedly, so this is the one, reportedly named as a co-conspirator in a massive fake streaming scheme? DMN set out to answer, so Digital Music News, that question in the wake of the indictment of Michael Smith. And he's been accused of wire fraud and more of allegedly masterminding the mentioned royalty scheme. In short, according to the indictment, Smith, throughout the better part of a decade, harnessed AI to pump out. Well, that wasn't exactly it, right? So the indictment said that he started doing the AI in, what was it, 2018, to pump out hundreds of thousands of tracks. Okay, but he's been doing it a long time. After uploading these tracks on major demand platforms, the defendant then allegedly scored over 10 million in royalties, right? Fake bots. All right, we got this. To be sure, the indictment describes a 2018 deal between Smith and the chief executive officer of an AI music company whose business allegedly began supplying the computer-generated works at the heart of the purported scheme. Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Are they saying that this is what inspired the CEO? He's like, I just, realized this was so profitable. Prosecutors didn't mention Boomy CEO Alex Mitchell by name. No, they didn't. But his involvement as one of the co-conspirators highlighted in the indictment subsequently emerged. And while the fact is valuable, it wasn't particularly difficult to uncover. How'd you guys uncover it? I must know. That's because Mitchell, who seemingly did more than allegedly provide AI creations to music, is named as a co-author on thousands of tracks with the defendant in the Mechanical Licensing Collective's database. Oh my gosh. Which hindsight is 2020 registered north of 200,000 of these works under Smith's name, with 5,000 attributed to Mitchell, to collected. Okay, guys. So for those of you who are like, what are they talking about? The Mechanical Licensing Collective. It's a nonprofit organization. It was put into place to collect on royalties, that are paid from the digital service providers. And so what they just said here is they go, the co-creator with Smith, the infringing musician, right, was the CEO. Yikes. All right. So, technically, Digital Music News is jumping to a conclusion, but they're saying it's really hard to have it be any other way than this. Furthermore, at least as things are laid out in the indictment, the curiously brazen move contrasted other elements of the calculated alleged scheme. For instance, the defendant was allegedly careful to direct a small number of streams to each track so to avoid raising suspicion. Yep, we read that. Shifting the focus to where the cards will fall in the wake of the alleged scheme, there are obvious questions about the future of Boomy and especially its ADA distribution deal.
Yeah, let's get into that in a second. But it just reminds me of like the movie Office Space. I don't know if you've ever seen Office Space, but like their whole thing was they were trying to defraud their company by just stealing like a fraction of a cent from across everything. Just like they watched. So these guys watched Office Space and old like mob movies or something.
Oh man. All right. So let's see what the final update on this is. Finalized after Spotify booted thousands of Boomy tracks due to alleged fake streams, besides temporarily blocking the AI company's releases before implementing a distributor fine for streaming manipulation. So they got the sanctions. The underlying agreement was formally announced in November of 2023, but it's unclear where things go from here. At the time of writing, neither Mitchell nor ADA/Warner Music, which previously invested, in the AI music platform, had responded to a request for comment. The radio silence from the involved parties, on top of the lack of news on the original affidavit, means we'll have to rely on existing evidence. Fair enough. And as things stand, this evidence points to business as usual for Boomy and ADA. All right, so let's speculate for a sec. So if it turns out the CEO of this company engaged in these practices, right? So then is the CEO the one who's going to jail? Right? Because usually when we have, and I talked about this at the beginning of the segment, and I go, there is a difference when it's a civil claim, meaning someone personally is bringing something and they're like, you as the CEO in your official capacity, so therefore I am suing the company itself. And so in this case, we'll see if he gets indicted. We'll see what happens. What do you think?
I think walls are going to start crumbling around companies. Just that partnership alone, it's not good for anybody. And the main thing is how much money this is taken away from artists that we are not going to see. We don't know what's going to happen to this money, if it's ever going to be recovered, if it's going to be shifted back, and what that would even mean, or is it just one of those things that kind of gets absorbed into the government? You know what I mean? I don't know what's going to end up happening with that. AI and old school tactics was how this is able to happen, because the scheme would not have been able to happen if they weren't able to generate hundreds of thousands of songs in a matter of however long it was done over time. I mean, to do that little a couple streams here and there across all of these songs, and then it ends up being millions of dollars is crazy. I mean, there's so many crimes here. I don't know, the fact that guy made himself a co-author, maybe he was there's some kind of vanity there, well, what if one of these songs just happens to become a hit, I could get paid on that one.
Well, and then look, here's my question, right? So, sometimes when there's restitution paid, right? So in this case, the government's like, all right, we want the 10 million, right? I want to know, what are they going to do with that money? Obviously, he's not going to have it all, right? That's part of the problem here. There's some money somewhere. They're going to get something. And then where's that money going? Because we always go through the chain. We're like, well, this was paid from the music platforms, but that money was paid from advertisers. So we're like, is it going back to Spotify?
Where's it go?
Is it going back to the advertisers? I mean, because
they didn't
get their advertisements, right? Their stuff was featured on billions and billions of plays and songs and all this stuff, and no one actually ever heard
nothing.
Those weren't real streams.
I mean, could some of these advertisers have a case against them too? Where could the lawsuits be, whatever the verdict ends up being, full on with this? Because I think I read in the Forbes article that the charges come with 20 years each on them. You know what I mean? As far as jail time. Once this is all done, I mean, are we going to see these companies and just people that advertise I didn't get my money's worth? Are they going to be mad at Spotify? Are they going to be mad at the ADA. I mean, who's gonna get it? Who, like, this can't be in. This isn't like, oh, $30,000. This is millions of dollars.
Yeah, and I'm not a criminal attorney, but my understanding is that when money is collected, it's not given back to the harmed party. Sometimes it goes into like a restitution fund. So this will be part of it. So look, guys, this was a big one.
Yeah,
Please drop your comments down below.
20 years in prison for wire fraud conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering conspiracy. So he's like looking at 60 years.
Yeah. All right. And we're going to keep you guys posted. Drop that comment down below, and we'll see you on the next one.